Right, while they're setting up the stage for the next panel, I'll quickly tell you a little bit about it. The title is NFTs, Connecting Communities, Connecting the World. This discussion is going to explore the role of art and NFTs in driving global investments, particularly in emerging markets. And it's a panel with expertise from investments to products to data science and art, and it's also going to share some information about the first UN and multi-government-backed collaboration in the NFT space. On the panel is Nadieh Bremer, Rudolf Budja, Philipp Schaerrer, and of course, Bill Tai. Let me just tell you about Bill a little bit. Well, actually, if I need to tell you about Bill Tai, I've got to ask, where have you been? But just to say that he's been a VC since 1991. 23 IPOs, first backer of Zoom, backer of Canva, Wish, co-founding chairman of Treasure Data. I mean, it goes on. Behind Bitfury, Dapper, Fluidity, One-Off, Power Ledger, board chair of Hut 8 Mining, and of course, MetaGood, which I hope we'll hear a little bit about. Please welcome Bill Tai and his panel.
Yeah, so honored to be here, and really, really fun to be on a panel with a number of artists. You know, I think every venture person loves to be working on projects that aren't just kind of financial and company building. So I wanted to start off with this picture, which is a picture from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were on stage, Chris Fabian and I, announcing the first ever cryptocurrency fund sanctioned by the United Nations. Somehow that just got lost in the noise of crypto winter. I would have thought that would have been bigger noise than El Salvador allowing Bitcoin transactions. You know, obviously the UN is a massive, very credible organization, multinational, and they allowed Chris to set up a cryptocurrency fund that accepts Bitcoin and Ethereum. And nobody knows it. But anyway, so now you all know it again in a period where we're not in crypto winter. So spread the word. That was done in support of this project. So there's a project that I've been working with Chris on called Giga Connect. Giga Connect is very ambitious. It's a project to connect every single school on the planet to the internet by 2030. And you can't do great things without great ambition, and that, it's not going to be an easy thing to do. UNICEF is an organization within the UN. This project started in 2019. We got it pushed through with the support of the International Telecommunications Union, the UN Broadband Commission, and the Secretary General of the UN. They all got behind it to try to leverage their worldwide presence, all their member nations, the capital they could bring, and then we set up this little cryptocurrency fund. So member nations and public donations are made available through these processes to fund this rollout. We have a couple of countries that we're starting with. The project has already mapped. UNICEF obviously funds kind of children's things, supports children all around the world, and they've built over 1 million schools, or contributed to the building of over 1 million schools. Interestingly enough, they didn't always know where they were over the many decades that they were built. So there's been an extensive process of mapping those schools out, trying to figure out how to connect these things up. Now that technology has progressed to the point where you can have a little solar panel and a little dish, it's a lot cheaper to connect these things than it was in the days of digging trenches and laying fiber. So it can actually be done with the support of NFTs. So how does this all connect with NFTs? My journey into NFTs started with the funding of Dapper Labs when they were launching CryptoKitties. And as the CryptoKitties market started to go, I could see that there would be a lot of energy and a lot of interesting things. William Quigley kind of ended it with NFTs are going to connect to real things in the world. They're also going to connect to real life-changing things. And that's what this effort is about. I asked the guys at Dapper, I said, I will fund you if you do something special for me, which was to create a special edition CryptoKitty for an ocean charity conservation thing I was throwing in a couple of months. So they did create this item, which is called Hanu Kitty. It was the first ever NFT sold for an ocean charity back in 2018. So we cooked it up in 2017. It took us a while to launch it. I got Richard Branson and a few friends to help kind of kick it off at the Necker Blockchain Summit. We ended up raising $25,000 and tied it to an in real life thing, which was funding something called Operation Gyro with Captain Paul Watson of Sea Shepherd. He parked his ship in front of the turtle nesting area off of the coast of Antigua and had people walk the beaches 24/7 for many, many weeks on an island where they don't have a lot of economy, and sometimes people will actually kill some turtles and eat them. And the little babies, you got to get them off of the ocean. So that NFT, I don't know how many turtles it helped save, but it helped save a bunch of turtles. And I wanted to take that effort and make it replicable and scalable. So last summer, we created something called MetaGood. And we had that name before the big company changed their name, by the way. And the idea is basically to create a universe or a metaverse of explosive karma in economies driven by NFTs, where the economic energy and activity goes to fuel good causes, like we did with the little turtle thing, but at bigger scale. What you see here is the Armadillo building in Glasgow, which is it was the building used as the headquarters of the UN Climate Summit, COP26. This building, we had the rights to project images on that building, and we're going to NFT a bunch of things off of that, and the proceeds are going to go to support a bunch of causes. The images you see on this are from a photographer named Steve McCurry, who has he's got a children's book of 1,000 children from around the world, and he supports a bunch of causes. We're going to come back to some of the images a little bit later. One of the collections we launched through MetaGood is something called On-Chain Monkey. And it was not meant to be our first collection. We had lined up something with UN, and we were going to do a campaign with the UN. But we did a test experiment we wanted to see whether we could create an entire NFT collection, 10,000 items, in one transaction. And so the CEO of the company, Danny Yang, he's a brilliant computer scientist. He managed to create one 4K file that is an SVG, scalable vector graphics file, a data table, and a math expression. And with one click, it renders on the fly all of these different things, and he did it with one Ethereum transaction. So it was like super, super efficient. So, the items are kind of, very, very graphics oriented. They're not super detailed yet, but we're going to do some new collections too. This kind of took off, so you can look at the collection on onchainmonkey.com. As these things trade around, coming back to Steve McCurry, part of the proceeds go into a pool. That pool, which later is going to become distributed with some input from a DAO. So all the on-chain monkeys become holders of kind of a right or a community member voting element that allows them to influence recommendations to what things we support. You might have seen in the news on Thanksgiving Day that Sharbat Gula, who is the woman that was on the National Geographic cover with the staring eyes that you see there, as America pulled out of Afghanistan and the Taliban took over, it became more dangerous for women, and it became particularly dangerous for women that were American, iconic figures. A secret mission was put together by Steve McCurry, the photographer, with Sophia Swire, who runs something called Future Brilliance, to evacuate Sharbat Gula and her family from Afghanistan. The funding for that operation was funded by the sale of on-chain monkeys. So we now have a precedent for how do you use NFTs, communities of interest, the energy, the economic activity to change people's lives in a positive way and start to go for bigger and bigger and bigger scale. So that leads to this item. This one is going to do something for the UN, and I'm not going to talk long. I'm just going to stop there. This is a very, very special one of a collection done in a really cool way by Nadieh Bremer. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop there and hand it over. You're going to hear more about these things because 15 minutes ago, or at 3 o'clock today, we started, these went up for sale. And there's going to be an auction, a rolling auction of these items. And there's some activity tonight that ties in some other special things from Philipp in a gallery and some things with Rudolf's help. So let me just pass this on to Nadieh.
Thanks. Hi. So as a little bit of background, I'm officially an astronomer, then turned into a data scientist for a few years, but I discovered that I loved visualizing the information and the stories that I found even more than just doing the data analysis, so I turned into a data visualization designer. And through that, I even explored the data art side, and I love that even more, where I could be as creative as I could while still using data as the underlying sort of concept. For example, these are more of the data visualizations. I still love working with science-related data. But also even towards the data art side, 3 out of these 4 have data in them as well about stars, about the air quality, about Ethereum blockchains. So yeah, I also got into NFTs because it gave me a way to work on my art full-time instead of having to take on client projects. Also doing generative art in that sense. So as a little bit of background about me, but I was approached by UNICEF to create an NFT collection for their Giga project, because that is also heavily data-based. And with the Giga project, they have, like they said, they have data about 1 million schools, and for about 300,000 of those, they know if they're connected to the internet or not. So I took those 300,000 schools and I divided them over 1,000 clusters in a way, 1,000 different NFTs. And I made the design very much from this sort of childlike wonder element with simple shapes, but combining them in many different ways. And what you're seeing here is basically a different kingdom. They're called the Patchwork Kingdom. So each school has been transformed into a little square. And together, they kind of connect together and form a city, a kingdom. And the ones on top are those schools that are connected to the internet, while the ones at the bottom are the ones that are not connected to the internet. And even more so, for the ones at the bottom, I apologize, we're sitting in front of some of them. For the ones at the bottom, you can see that some of them are stroked while others are filled. And for the ones that are filled, the Giga project actually knows that there is a cellular network in the area of that school. So that school has this potential to be easily connected to the internet, but still they're not. So they need help. But also on the top side, with the schools that are connected, because they are connected, they know about each other, I implemented other things based on the data. So for example, you can see in certain sections that in certain groups of elements, they combine to form a bigger group, like 4 that are lining up to form the same symbol. These are schools that have something in common. They're from the same country, they have the same kind of internet connection. But for the 10% of schools that have the highest internet connection, I turned them into flowers. And if they happen to be placed side by side, they turn into a rainbow, because how often do you see rainbows in children's drawings? And if they are placed on top of each other, they become kind of flower shapes with petals, and they become bigger, and then the faster the speed, the more complex the flower shape becomes. So there's data interwoven throughout this visual in many different ways, all based on the Giga project, trying to really juxtaposition the schools that are connected and the schools that still need help to get connected to the internet, because it makes such a difference for the children that are going to school there. So there are 1,000 of these, and these have been going, like Bill said, these are now available. Hopefully they'll be minted out soon. But tonight at the auction, actually each of these images, they connect to exactly a certain neighbors. Because they were all cities, I felt that they could connect together, all 1,000 of them, into a giant map. Because like cities on a map. So that giant quilt of 1,000 cities is the item that is going on auction tonight. Where again, all of the funds will be going to the Giga project to help get more schools in the world connected to the internet. So yeah, I hope you like it. And we have another artist, well, we have 3 more artists that are auctioning off an item. And one of them is Philipp, so I'll pass it over.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This is the website, and I'm very honored also to participate here and to be invited. Bill, I really appreciate your presence and your visions. And that's the piece. There are, like Nadieh told, there are 5 pieces which will be sold today. And I'd just like to add a little story about, we are a little bit speaking from the creator side now, and we are a little bit speaking about the big picture, topics, concepts. And what is interesting, I'm an architect, and coming in a sense from commissions, where I worked a lot with Herzog de Mont for making this architectural visualization, stadium Beijing, etc., in the topping of CGI. And of course, this whole NFT, it's also about ownership, selling to the collectors and to the museum. It's quite a good shifting. It's not only an investment about the site, people who are collecting, but it's also an absolutely nice element for people which are creating art, especially when they are digitally created. because normally what happens, you just have a JPEG in the end developed, and you just have to break it down and squeeze it to a certain form and to a print, and you have again a certificate of authenticity, which is also kind of an A4 PDF print. We will look at that. That's the piece. I just like to bend stories, and of course it looks a little bit kind of photorealistic, and I mean, we are in a special time in the sense that all what we believe that is photographic, no, I mean, it's a hard challenge and shift, no, and in my work, I think I often deal with this kind of interrogating the medium photography as a piece of evidence, which is today not anymore, and I'm very curious, 20, 30 years, if our kids look much more kind of critical to photographic representation. What you see here is a piece, it's kind of a pseudo snowflake, organic, but they are a little bit irritation in the sense they are wrapped up in a kind of a graphical part, no, which also tries to a little bit cantilever and interrogate the piece. I have to check about it's turning, it's three-dimensional, and that's my topic. I just like to be bound there in the middle, no, it's a bit probably the meta concept about metaverse, no, where you bring things together, where you like to merge analog, physical, no, the stimuli in situ, the fiction, and I just try to focus that on the image-based process. You know, I just ask myself what's happening on the creative or the image side. So it's really this kind of contact point about this I would call it apparent reality. Also, we have to discuss about what is reality. I mean, these things have so shifted. You know, if a kid plays video games and the guy, the dad, takes the electricity, I mean, that's emotional crisis there. No, it's real. No, they're absolutely in. No, so all this concept about fiction and real, I think they are very interesting thing to look at. I checked the hour. Don't worry. So I'm architect. Did a lot of this kind 20 years ago. No, Beijing Stadium, and I mean 20 years CGI was not so pushed. No. So we really that was the iconic term. No, you feel it in every design. No, things have to be visualized, and computer graphics. I mean, that's probably a good illustration how polygon rendering, etc. Computer power was not so far, and that was a little bit the status quo in the 2000. No, I mean it's kind of easy, dummy, but I mean that's the quality of a full rendering at the time. No. And what we did, we just rendered, and this is a fragment about the Beijing Stadium, so already 20 years now, we couldn't have, in a sense, quality of light, now because our computers were not yet there and the programs were not there. So I progressed mainly by montage now. So it's and this is interesting, it's still quite, I think in a lot of digital artists, it's still quite of a manual handcrafty element that we have talked about that probably artificial intelligence will wrap up and define movies now by itself. But just to show you, the work, I mean, merging and working with a lot of image fragments, etc., mounting up to get to the pictures now to a certain complexity which wasn't able 20 years ago. No, I mean, we are looking in architectural context now where the computer power was not so pushed. No, but that was my starting point. No, and what is interesting, it's a component-based work, so I mean there were tons of little fragments of textures, of pieces now which have to be mounted. Of course, I had in the end a huge library which I had to store. I mean, they're all probably somebody would say these are assets. No, I didn't make NFT, of course, of this, but I worked from the beginning, from 2004, a lot with database, where I have everything, components, also stimulations, color combinations. So this was a work for Centre Pompidou, which is also in the collection, just kind of prints about my diary. It's kind of a digital diary, which has a kind of a compression because the thumbnails are very small. That's probably about 15 years, which have all this kind of stored element. What is important is about that it's a visual reservoir. And I think it's not only a replication about analog art, what happens in the digital art. I think we are much more freer, and I come to that, and I have to look to the time. We are much more freer to compose, because digital material is much more able, in a sense, to freeze, to morph, to merge, which material which is bent to a carrier, of course, is not as flexible as that. Wildbadensee was my first personal work, which is also in the Museum of Modern Art, which is, in a sense, triggers and ironical displays architecture, which normally an image is always the product after the phase of planning, and these are kind of final images here, which are just taken up from scratch, mounted with these components, and has to do a lot with these fragments which I collect in order to get these art pieces now. So these art pieces, they are in a sense JPEG, they look like existing architecture, that's a series of 2009, but the thing, I had a JPEG, and when you sell to the museum or the collector, what they want, they like a print, which we can discuss, if this is correct, consistence to the nature of the work, and the certificate of authenticity, which would make the link to...
That's going to get into
William,
item, yeah.
Okay, so that's about, 30 seconds now, it's about new artistic processing techniques which weren't able with analog world. Not remote, which is meant for the Arturalis, it's also about this kind of independence about bodies and textures, Not remote is a series which is also already 11 years old, it's not animated, but this work here, which we have seen here, is certainly based, and which also be auctioned at the Sala Modelline at Saturday, is based, of course, of this not remote series, which dates from 2010. So I'm done. I'm sorry, Rudolf.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And Rudolf, you might give a statement of how we're transitioning arts into artists' work into what you do.
Yes, thank you, Philipp. First of all, thank you for the introduction. I want to thank also to Nicolo and to Jojo Rufiner to make this happen. It's a wonderful event. I'm happy to be here. My name is Rudolf Budja. I'm born in Austria, left to the US when I was 18 years old, and just so people know who I am. I love the idea to transform NFTs and art together, to bring also other pieces together in that way, and also the idea to fund UNICEF with art and fantastic artists what we have here, with that in that way, that you use technology to bring art into the better place. So basically, what we did is we founded a company. I mean, I'm coming from the art scene. I own galleries over 30 years, and I'm trading and building collections. That means I met Warhol, for instance, when I was 18 years old in New York. I worked with Basquiat, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and came with no knowledge into the art world. And then I got stuck, and it's my profession now. 2-3 years ago, I had an idea to make real physical art in a way more attractive and even more tradable. So what we're doing is we're using the technology and the blockchain to create an NFT, not to create an NFT as a digital work. We use it in a different way as a representation of a real art piece. So that means the real artwork is there physically already. We create everything, all the information about that art piece into a smart contract. That means you have let's say, the certificate, all the row of provenance, what is it made of, where is it now at the moment, and the value. So based on that, that information will be in the smart contract blockchain, and then it's tradable very, very, very easier. So it will be changed the art market in that way. So then on that top of that, I am also a little bit in that way where I say, what can I do to make it better for the world, So we created a tokenization so that NFT can be tokenized. So what I do is in the way that you make it available for people that can afford a $1 million art piece, make it available with tokens that can be sold in a fraction of 1,000, and people can download not only the digital piece, so they download the digital piece, but it is effective representation of the real art piece. So that's the different way. And I can agree more with William. He explained the NFT world absolutely in the right direction. I must say it was like, wow, what is that exactly what we do in the end? And what to bring a real piece of art into the blockchain and have it sellable. So our overview, so we have some challenges, of course, which is high gas fees, high manipulations, and things like that. We can have the solution on that. So we created a blockchain way, like we're going into Cardano, That means we met Charles Hutchinson, and we were very proud to be a part of his team now, where he gave us the best programmers to make that happen. You know, so it's a blockchain format where it's just programmed in other different ways. So you come around about using a lot of electricity. So then that form is then we have this way where we have a club. So in three stages, it's just a gold, platinum, and black card club, which is by invitation only. You get a lot of incentives and being invited to different events with that. You have to sign up that, and then you'll be able to go into our world of real art and NFT. That's not the last. The last would be something how it works, you know. So you sign up, you select your membership, and then you basically go and select a token, and you're in, and you have it. You can download the full piece, and you can use it in the metaverse, hang it on your wall whenever you want, and tell everybody where you invested. On top of everything, we created something where we help young artists as well, because we thought it's nice to give them something when they're still alive, you know. So you hear about artists, they die and then they get rich, you know, because they become very famous after. So we want to turn that around a little bit, give them the tokens, make them available, or sell pieces even as one NFT, but represent it with an NFT with a physical art piece. So basically, this is it. Here you can see how a token looks like. That means there's all tokens. The black ones are already sold, so we can keep 501 tokens selling 499. And the one you see here is one where you can just choose, and this is the representation of a physical art piece. Yeah, that's the tokenization, the steps, and then we have a lot of member benefits, exclusive rights to purchase, fractional ownership of masterworks. So then also, invitations to exclusive and real-world member events, and invitations to online events, and then resell NFTs at seller's discretion. This is pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Yes, so I do have a couple of comments and questions, you know. So as I listen to the three of you talk about art and how art is changing, you know, it's just amazing how you do, how someone would have defined art a few years back or a few 100,000 years back, totally changing. Like, you know, if you think about like original drawings in the Lascaux caves of, you know, charcoal, that was art, right? And then when oil painting or oil paint was invented, there was an exponential increase in kind of the kinds of things you could do, and that became a category on its own of incredible value. And now with the digital tools, when I look at the stuff you're doing, like all three of you are doing, the permutations of things that can be done that look beautiful, that have a lot under the hood, it's just incredible to see. And so there's so much embedded value now that can be traced, tracked, distributed with low friction. You know, and artists in the past obviously had a lot of limitations on both production and distribution, which are melting away now because everything's going digital. So the markets are going to be transformed remarkably. It's pretty cool. And
can
yes.
I say something to that?
Yeah, please.
There's a very interesting thing about that. If you imagine 100 years back when a camera didn't exist, so a painter was an artist. A painter was like had to paint a realistic situation, like we'll be sitting here, for instance. After they found a camera, so it was way faster, and it was not necessary to be painted realistic. So then the Impressionism, the Expressionism, minimalism, everything came after, right? Mm-hmm. So I think like right now we have that same situation with an NFT. So the NFT is changing the situation in a way, but you only have to be careful. Not every NFT is a good piece of art. You have to look and see what is a real good piece of art. It's just an extension of a media, a second media, a third or fourth. Is it a photograph, a painting, or I see it like that in the art historical wise. So you have to know what is a good quality on NFT, and this you should buy, I think.
Yeah. And Nadieh, I'd love to hear the kind of art you were doing before you got into like kind of the digital NFT world. How would you produce and distribute, and how has that changed in the world of blockchain?
So before NFTs, I have like an online shop, and that is where people could buy prints and pen plots of the things that I did. But it was the reach is so much smaller in that sense, and there's so much. Part of that is social media, being able to market yourself, and somehow the NFT greatly increases that range that you can get, and how people can interact, but also how directly you can interact with collectors, and especially those that feel a kind of loyalty to you in a way. That's also been an amazing experience for me. But beforehand, it was hard. Actually, it was more. It was very hard to find enough work for me to work on art, and I generally took on other things in the meantime. But now being able to work on art 100% is
That's great.
Amazing. Yeah.
I know we're running out of time, but we will take a couple questions. I'm going to make 2 comments first, which is, again, what you guys are doing is very cool, and the transformational things happening in the market are the same things that I work on in companies. And when people look at the things I invest in and why they work, one of the philosophies I have that people that know me well know, like they hear me say over and over and over, is I look for things where I can find an emergent behavior, lower the friction to that, make it very replicable and scalable. And every time I found something, whether it was like Canva, Wish, Zoom, that's all they do. They Hadoop in treasure data. It's like lower the friction to usage, replicate and scale, and it creates value. And that's kind of happening to the art world now. And I think it's going to express itself in ways that we can't imagine. They're going to be very cool. The other thing I want to say about the Giga project and why I work on it, which I hope it inspires you to get involved and do some things with it. So a lot of us are in crypto because we maybe don't have faith in fiat currencies, and it's not like complete lack of faith, but one of the things everybody knows is that there's a lot of debt in the world, and capitalist economies kind of go through these cycles. If you think about the world today, we have about 8 billion people on the planet. There's about 3 billion in developed economies, 5 billion in undeveloped economies. That bucket of people generates a GDP of about 70 trillion. It's a little bit bigger than that, but roughly 70 trillion. There's a debt ball on top of that 70 trillion of about 270 trillion. The little ball, the 70 trillion ball, grows about 2 or 3% a year on average. The big ball grows 10 or 15% a year on average, and they're never gonna kind of get caught up, right? That, how do you support this little thing has to support the big thing, and the big thing is growing faster. Just, like 10% of 270 is 27 billion. It's adding like a third of the world GDP of debt every year. And in capitalist cycles, historically, that has never ended well. And it's always caused convulsive wars and changing currencies and things like that. One of the only ways, after thinking about this way too much since the great financial crisis, that I could think of, like, how do you tilt this so that we don't have this convulsive implosion? The only way to do that is to get the other 5 billion people on the planet productive really fast, and to get the economy underlying that debt ball to grow. And so the project around GigaConnect is really, you've got billions of people in these school areas that are not connected to the internet. The modern economy and growth in GDP is all that top part. If you could just, it's kind of like railway tracks. In America, when it was forest, you laid a railway track. Every time the track stopped, there was a town. Anytime there's a town, there's an economy. And so think of these as digital pipes that are like railway lines that are creating little microeconomies all over the planet to support the world. And so that's what you're supporting if you buy these NFTs and support GigaConnect. You are preserving, you're empowering a lot of other people, and you may be saving all of the planet for us. Anyways, okay, please.